Hey, sleepy souls. Welcome to tonight's quiet journey into forgotten corners of history. Tonight, you'll slip through the timber-bird lanes of medieval villages, through the heavy wooden doors of dark cottages, and into the hush of flickering candlelight where a midwife's whispered prayers meet the cries of new life. Imagine yourself leaning against cool plaster walls, listening as soft cloth rustles, as a kettle bubbles on the hearth, as the heartbeat of centuries-old struggles hums beneath your feet. Where are you listening from tonight? Is it midnight or early morning where you are? Drop a comment below. It's comforting to know who's drifting through the hush night with us. And if these stories ease your mind, remember to subscribe for more boring histories to carry you to sleep, one ancient ref at a time. Asterisk, could you survive as a medieval midwife? Imagine you, a humble village midwife in the late 1400s, moving from house to house on dirt lanes that suck at your boots in winter and bake dry in summer. You carry your whole trade on your back, a leather satchel of herbs bundled with twine, a rusted blade wrapped in linen, a scrap of parchment with a whispered charm for safe delivery. The air inside your patient's cottage is thick, warm with bodies, wet with fear. A laboring woman moans on a straw pallet. You kneel by her, damp skirts clinging to your knees, while her mother tosses more peat on the fire. The thick smoke burns your eyes, but hides the stench of blood and sweat. No doctor will come here. Number. Church man will help you. You are the line between a living baby and a small body buried at dawn behind the churchyard wall. The villagers respect you but fear you too, a whisper away from which, if your luck runs dry, you stroke the mother's hair back, feeling the pulse of life in her temple. You whisper prayers, feeling your own heartbeat drum in your wrists. When the baby comes, tiny and slick, you catch it with steady hands, wiping it clean, wrapping it tight. Another soul on the tally. Another night you've survived. Asterisk, the tale of Mother Shipton, witch, midwife, and serial, heard her name whispered on the wind. Mother Shipton, they call her. The crooked midwife who lives alone by the river in Yorkshire, tending to herbs no one else dares to pick. By day, she gathers roots along the hedgerows, foxglove to steady the heart, mugwort to ease the pain, rosemary for remembrance. By night, a candle flickers in her tiny stone hut where babies draw their first breath under her watchful eye. Picture her cave-like dwelling, rough stone walls dripping with moss, iron pots bubbling over a peat fire, pungent smoke curling around dried bundles hanging from the rafters. Her patients fear her, yet they come anyway. When a baby is turned the wrong way, when a mother is too young or too old, when a charm is needed to keep the devil's hand away, rumors say she sees the future in the flames and the swirl of tea leaves. They say she foretold floods and fires, kings dethroned, plague ships on the horizon. But beneath the legend is the simple truth. A woman alone, bartering safety for the village's scorn. Imagine standing at her crooked doorway. The world outside howls with winter wind, but inside the cave is warm and close, and the baby's first cry cuts the dark like dawn. Asterisk, the secrets of medieval birthing charms and hidden magickets well past midnight. The fire just coals now, but the new mother won't sleep until you've done it. Pinned the birthing charm under the mattress, sprinkled rosemary by the door, murmured the lines that keep demons at bay. Centuries later, we find these scraps, tucked in church archives and behind crumbling walls. Pieces of vellum scrawled with Latin prayers, tiny figurines shaped of beeswax or clay, herbal sachets bound with red thread, some stitched into the hem of a shift, some hidden inside the pillow. Archaeologists brush away centuries of dust to find them, fragile as moth wings. For the midwife, these bits of magic were practical, a way to soothe a mother's mind when no cure could be guaranteed. Imagine tracing your finger over faded words, inked in a monk's careful hand, still clear after hundreds of years. Sanctus. Spiritus, protect this child. Picture a young girl gripping that charm tight as her belly tightens in pain. The scent of lavender and myrrh rises with her ragged breath. In the hush of her room, faith and fear mingle like smoke and candlelight. Asterisk birth in a noble house. Velvet drapes and silent fears. Now picture thee. Hush of a noble woman's chamber, high above the muddy lanes of the village. The stone walls are draped with embroidered hangings to guard against drafts. Servants pad across rush-strewn floors, carrying steaming basins and linens, so white they glow by candlelight. A wealthy lady labors under a canopy of velvet, her hands clasped tight around a rosary of carved ivory beads. The manor's midwife, well paid and trusted, works swiftly, murmuring gentle prayers under her breath. Outside the door, the father-to-be paces in a carved wooden chair, the fate of his family's name balanced on every heartbeat behind. The door dot here, birth is cloaked in layers of ritual. Amulets stitched into pillows, silver bowls of wine ready to warm the mother's blood. A priest waiting to christen the child in the next room, should death come too quickly. Yet all the wealth in the world cannot soften the danger. A noble birth may decide alliances, property, even crowns. One cry too few, and fortune's crumble dot. Imagine the flicker of candlelight on polished oak, the hush of footsteps on cold stone, the sigh of relief when a baby's first cry pierces the heavy air. Asterisk sometimes, a midwife's duties pulled her far from the village lanes, into the hush of the woods where secrets could hide in shadows. Imagine you, clutching your leather bag, slipping through damp underbrush by moonlight. Ahead, a shivering girl leans against the gnarled roots of an ancient oak. Her father's anger is the reason she's here. No wedding ring, no priest to bless the union. Only you, your breath misting in the cold air, and the soft lullaby of the wind through the branches. You spread a blanket on the leaf-strewn ground, your hands steady even as owls watch from the trees. The birth is quick but quiet, a soft, wet gasp of life, then the girl's muffled sobs. You swaddle the baby in linen, place a sprig of rosemary under its tiny chin, and whisper a prayer for a future that may never come. You bury the afterbirth deep in the forest soil, so no wandering eyes can guess the truth. The girl pulls her cloak tight, hiding the infant inside as she slips away between the trees. You are left alone beneath the moon, wiping your hands clean on your apron, listening to the hush return to the woods. Asterisk, not every midwife learned her trade alone. Sometimes an older woman would take on an apprentice, a girl of 13, maybe 14, whose hands were nimble and whose mind was quick enough to remember which herb eased pain, which prayer was best whispered at the brink of death. Imagine yourself as that apprentice, sitting cross-legged by the hearth, while your mistress teaches you how to brew mugwort tea, how to fold linen for binding wounds, how to read the signs at a mother's shifting breath. The village might look at you with suspicion, but they will come knocking when the time comes. There is no formal schooling, no books with neat illustrations. Only long nights at the bedside, the hush of whispered knowledge passed from lips to ears, like secrets between generations. You carry these lessons inside you, seeds waiting to bloom when your mistress is gone, and the door creaks open in the dead of night. The weight is heavy, but so is the pride and the strange, small power that comes with being needed when the veil between life and death grows thin. Asterisk, sometimes the village lanes fell silent, except for the distant sound of soldiers' boots or the church bell tolling for another victim of the plague. But birth did not wait for peace or good health. Picture a midwife called to a thatched cottage on the edge of a village where black banners hang from doors. Inside, the air is stale with fear. A laboring mother clutches at a straw pillow, her face flushed and slick with sweat. You wash your hands in vinegar water, the sharp scent barely masking the sickness clinging to the walls. Outside, you can hear soldiers bickering over scraps, or peasants digging hurried graves. But inside, your world shrinks to the mother's harsh breaths and the tight circle of light from a single tallow candle. When the baby comes, you wrap it quick and strong, murmuring thanks that at least this new life might escape the same fate. As so many others, you do not stay long. There are other bedsides to visit, other children to coax into this fragile world. Asterisk, the church watched midwives carefully. Too carefully, some would say. After all, who else knew so much about birth? And death? Who else mumbled strange prayers or used herbs that the learned priests did not understand? Imagine the local priest standing in your doorway, the smell of damp wool and incense clinging to his robes. He asks questions you answer carefully. What herbs do you use? Why do you recite that charm in Latin? He reminds you that witchcraft is not so far from midwifery in the eyes of the righteous. You bow your head, your eyes on the worn wooden floor, but inside you seethe. These men know nothing of the blood and tears, the sleepless nights bent over birthing beds. They do not kneel for hours by a mother's side, whispering comforts, cutting cords, washing away the fear. Still, you keep your secrets tucked deep in your pockets and your heart. You know which side of the door the true power sits on, and it is not his side. Asterisk. Asterisk, in an age before learned physicians would deign to attend a peasant's bedside, the village midwife was healer, herbalist, and wise woman rolled into one. Imagine you, stooped by the hearth, measuring spoonfuls of dried herbs into a bubbling iron pot. You know which roots soothe the mother's cramps, and which brew will coax out the afterbirth. You bind wounds with linen soaked in comfrey, ease fevers with elderflower, and place a sachet of lavender under a mother's pillow to keep bad spirits at bay. Sometimes you mutter a prayer, half Christian, half older than the church, while grinding rosemary with a pestle of worn stone. Children watch you wide-eyed, convinced you carry secrets in your pockets. Maybe you do. In your tiny garden, the plants grow in neat rows, sheltered by a wattle fence. Mugwort, sage, and rue, green guardians that keep your little world alive when so many fall ill. Asterisk, even the best midwife could not save every life. Sometimes the mother's breath would falter, the baby too stubborn to turn, the hours dragging on until dawn broke across tear-stained cheeks. Picture you kneeling at the foot of a rough-hewn bed, your hands slick with sweat and worry. The husband waits outside, knuckles white on the latch, a prayer on his lips. Inside, the candles burn low. You whisper soft words, sometimes to the mother, sometimes to the shadows above. You try herbs, you try the prayers passed down from your own mistress. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, and when you fail, you wash your hands in the cold basin by the door, dry them on your apron, and step out into the morning light, feeling every heavy heartbeat in your chest. You carry their stories with you, tucked behind your ribs. You know the villagers will look at you with both gratitude and fear. You live on the edge of blessing and blame. Asterisk, few villagers could pay their midwife in silver coins. Instead, you imagine yourself leaving a birthing bed with a half-dozen eggs wrapped in straw, a fresh loaf of coarse bread tucked under your arm, or a clay jar of honey for the winter months. Sometimes a grateful husband would fix your fence or bring you a load of firewood for the long nights ahead. Sometimes the gifts were meager, a ragged shawl, a single copper coin, or only a whispered blessing from a family too poor to offer more. You do not grow rich. Instead, you gather small treasures, a basket of root vegetables, a pair of woolen socks, an old hen that clucks at your heels as you pass through the muddy lane. Yet there is a certain warmth in this exchange, each gift a token of trust, a small piece of their lives shared with you, the woman who helps carry them through the darkest and brightest hours. Asterisk midwives were whispered about almost as much as they were needed. Imagine the village square, sun-dappled, and alive with low murmurs. You stand at the well, drawing up a wooden bucket, while two women glance your way, their voices hushed behind cupped hands. They say you know too much. They say you've seen too many secrets behind closed doors. They wonder if you slip charms under pillows or whisper hexes when the labor pains grow too strong. You pretend not to hear. You keep your eyes down, the bucket handle heavy in your hands. Inside, though, you know they will come to you again when the time comes, when the pains begin, when their prayers alone won't bring new life safely through dot in the hush of your cottage with your herbs and your whispered words. You remain what you have always been, the quiet bridge between the unknown and the here and now. Asterisk. No midwife's knowledge lives forever unless it is passed on. Picture yourself by the flickering hearth, an older woman now, your hair tucked under a linen wimple, skin lined by years of worry and wisdom. Beside you sits a girl, perhaps your own daughter, perhaps the daughter of a grateful mother you once saved. She watches as you crush dried herbs between stone, as you stitch a scrap of linen to bind a wound. You show her how to check the babies, position with gentle hands, how to whisper a prayer when hope grows thin. Outside the cottage, the village changes with each season, but here in your smoky kitchen, your words lay down roots that will outlast you. Each whispered remedy, each herbal charm, each practical tip for easing a birth. You place these things into her palms, hoping she will carry them forward into winters you will never see. Asterisk. Now imagine a summer evening, the harvest festival in full swing. The village green is dotted with dancers, fiddlers playing cheerful tunes, while children run barefoot through trampled grass. You stand a little apart, your hands folded over your apron, watching mothers you helped bring safely through their labors. They nod to you, lifting cups of ale in your direction. Their children wave shyly. You feel a small warmth in your chest, knowing that, for tonight at least, there are no whispered suspicions, no fear of the unknown. Tonight you are simply one of them, a woman who has seen too much, given enough, and carries on as the music drifts across the darkening sky. Asterisk. Every home you visit holds its own secrets. Imagine you at dawn, walking home along a muddy lane. Behind you, the cottage you just left grows quiet, its secrets sealed behind wooden shutters. A whispered confession here, a desperate plea there. All these moments gather like mist around your shoulders. You know who the father really was, which child arrived too soon, which marriage trembles on the edge of ruin. And yet you hold it, all dot at your hearth. You sit with a cup of watered ale, the flicker of rushlights catching your tired eyes. No one knows all that you know, not even the priest, not even the reeve. You are both trusted and feared, needed and resented, a keeper of life's messiest truths. You sigh, wrap a shawl around your shoulders, and let the hush of sleep settle around you. For now. Asterisk. And yet, above all else, you live under the quiet scrutiny of the church. Imagine stepping into the shadowed nave of a small village chapel, the heavy scent of beeswax candles mixing with cold stone air. The priest greets you with a nod that is never quite warm. He knows you have saved many lives, yet the old fear lingers that your hands know too much, that your whispered blessings might hold a pagan echo. You kneel, head bowed, letting the Latin prayers wash over you. Outside these walls you speak, your own words over laboring mothers. Inside, you say there's dot your eyes, step back into the sun, and feel the priest's eyes on your back as you go. A reminder that your path is always half in shadow, half in light. Asterisk. Not every story you carry ends in new life. Imagine yourself seated beside a straw pallet in a dimly lit cottage room, the air thick with the smell of sweat, soot, and stale rushes. A young mother lies there, her breathing shallow, her skin damp and pale. You have done all you can. The warm compresses, the prayers under your breath, the herbs boiled down into bitter draughts. A small cry echoes from the cradle nearby. The baby lives, but the mother's gaze drifts past you to someplace only she can see. You wipe her brow, fingers gentle, whispering comforts that grow softer with each breath. She, exhli, is dot in moments like these. You carry the weight alone. The family will remember you for what you could not save, even as you cradle the child in your arms. A small reminder that life never blooms without its shadows. Asterisk when the herbs fail. Some turn to charms. Imagine your work table by candlelight. Bundles of dried rue and mugwort hang above, strings of tiny bones, and scraps of parchment covered in protective words. You tie a ribbon of red wool around a mother's wrist to guard against evil spirits, or slip a carved amulet beneath her pillow when her labor drags on too long. You do this not because you trust in magic alone, but because fear is a heavy burden. These little acts give mothers a hope they can hold in trembling hands. You wrap each bundle with care, speak each blessing under your breath, feeling the centuries-old echo of midwives before you. In this, you are healer and guardian, bridging the old ways and the prayers of the church, the eternal dance between fear and hope. Asterisk, word travels faster than the wind in a small medieval village. Picture yourself stepping out of a cottage after a long night's work, the hush of dawn settling over muddy lanes and shuttered windows. But behind those shutters, voices whisper about who came to you for help, about which births ended badly, about the strange herbs you keep hidden under the hearth. Some say you are too skilled. Some say you have secrets best left alone. And yet, when their daughters labor through the night, they send for you. When fever takes hold of a mother, they beg you to come. Gossip is a cloak you learn to wear lightly, pulling it tighter around your shoulders as you walk through the village square, nodding at faces you know so well. The rhythm of suspicion, gratitude, and need beats on, as steady as the bells that toll in the distant church tower. Asterisk in your cottage, you keep secrets in plain sight. Imagine rough clay pots lined up on a crooked shelf. Each holds a measure of dried bark, berries, roots that must be boiled just so. A small linen bundle tucked beneath a loose floorboard carries the rarest things. A pinch of imported cinnamon, a scrap of parchment inscribed with a charm you dare not recite aloud in church. You crush leaves between your fingers and breathe. In their sharpness, you mix a paste to ease the swelling in a new mother's legs, or a bitter draught to slow a fever that could turn deadly. Each measure is done with care, the hush of your own heartbeat steady behind the rustle of herbs. No. One knows how much trust it takes to place life, death, and everything in between in the cracked bowl of your hands. Asterisk. There are bargains that never pass the lips. Picture a village elder standing at your door at dusk, cap in hand, eyes averted. His daughter's pregnancy is no longer a secret, but his family's shame must stay hidden. You know what he wants, and he knows you will never speak of it. You lead him inside, past the faint hiss of a simmering pot. He does not sit. Instead, he slips a few coins into your palm, a silent offering for the trouble you'll take, the herbs you'll brew, the story you'll never tell. You nod once. He nods back. No words break the hush as he disappears into the misty lane. In your world, trust is not written down but pressed into skin, left behind like the scent of sage on your apron. Asterisk, your basket is never truly empty. Imagine its worn wicker, frame lined with linen, each corner tucked with essentials, clean cloths boiled and dried in the sun, a small knife honed to a whisper of an edge, a roll of waxed thread. A tiny bottle of sweet oil for stiff limbs. When you arrive at a laboring woman's door, they glance at that basket with both hope and dread. Hope that these humble tools might ease the pains to come. Dread for what they might also mean when things turn dark. You pack it carefully each morning, muttering a prayer under your breath that you won't need the sharpest blade, that your fingers alone will be enough to coax new life into this world. And when your day ends, you clean each piece in the glow of your hearth, your hands red from lye soap and the weight of what they've touched. Asterisk. Some nights you feel the eyes of the church upon you. Imagine stepping softly through village lanes to reach a mother in need. Your feet leave no tracks on the damp earth, but the bells from the church tower toll overhead, marking each step like a silent warning. You know your knowledge is older than the priest's sermons. Your cures come from root and bone, whisper and touch. Yet if the wrong rumor takes hold, you could be called witch instead of healer, heretic instead of helper. Still, the same priest who speaks of sin on Sunday may nod at you in passing come Monday. His sister once labored long, and you brought her through alive. You keep this balance like an egg in your palm, careful not to let it crack. Asterisk. One day, your hands will grow too stiff to catch new life. Picture a younger woman sitting by your hearth, eyes wide in the fire's glow, hands folded in her lap. She is your niece, or perhaps the daughter of a friend, someone who watched you work, who asked too many questions to be turned away. You show her how to brew a simple tonic for cramps, how to listen for the faint heartbeat in a mother's swollen belly. You teach her the words to murmur over herbs tied in red thread, the quiet songs that soothe a laboring woman when the pains grow sharp. In this way, your work will live on, whispered from one pair of hands to another, the old ways cradling the new, the knowledge that life never begins or ends in silence. Asterisk. No life in a small village is free from gossip, and for a midwife, whispers can be a blessing or a curse. Picture yourself pausing at the market square, your basket on your hip as too old. Women glance up from their spinning. They lean close, pretend not to see you, but you know their tongues are busy. They speak of who you help and how often, whether a baby was too small or too large, whether your herbs are stronger than they ought to be. Yet these same gossiping tongues will send for you when their daughters labor in the night, or when a neighbor's child burns with fever. You learn to live alongside their mutterings. You keep your eyes soft and your secrets close, moving through the swirl of rumor like a stone at the bottom of a stream. Silent, enduring, unmoved. Asterisk. Birth does not wait for warm hearths or soft beds. Imagine trudging through a field at dawn, the grass heavy with dew, a stable ahead where a woman's cries rise above the rustle of restless animals. Inside, the straw is piled high, but the air is sharp with the scent of hay and manure. Bare, between stacks of feed, you lay your cloths and prepare your hands. The mother clutches the wooden post of a stall, sweat running down her neck, eyes wide with fear and hope. A healthy baby is born into this stable, the warm steam of breath from the livestock mixing with the first startled wail of new life. You clean mother and child with water from a wooden pail, your own knees aching from kneeling in the straw. Asterisk. Much of what you know comes not from books, but from the lips of those who came before. Picture your shelves lined with bundles of dried rosemary, sage, and yarrow. Small clay pots hold mixtures for easing pain, calming fear, stanching bleeding. You remember the old woman who taught you to harvest nettles at dawn when their sting is weakest, or to bury certain roots under the new moon for strength. Some of it may be superstition, but in the hush of a midnight birth, even a whispered rhyme can feel like a shield. Your knowledge is stitched from scraps of stories, half-remembered charms, and the steady practice of your own hands. This is how a midwife survives. A little faith, a little skill, and a basket always ready to gather more. Asterisk, not every life can be saved. In your darkest moments, you remember the small graves you pass on your way to the churchyard, tiny mounds, unmarked, but for a simple wooden cross. Each one is a story you carry in the folds of your apron, a weight that never leaves. You visit, sometimes when the air is thick with mist and the bells toll softly overhead. You bend to leave a handful of herbs or a single white blossom, a quiet promise that you have not forgotten Dot, and though your own heart has known loss, a child, perhaps who came too soon. You stand again when the knock comes at midnight. You walk the lonely path with your basket in hand, knowing that for every grief, there is a new cry waiting to be caught. Dot, as your hands grow more lined, you begin to notice the girls who watch you closely, the curious glances when you tie your herbs, the way they linger at your side when you speak of the signs of labor. Imagine sitting by your hearth, a young apprentice before you, her eyes wide with both fear and hunger for knowledge. You show her how to measure out dried pennyroyal, how to feel the mother's belly with a careful palm. You teach her when to speak gently, when to be firm, and when to hold her tongue. Together, you gather herbs at dawn, your baskets brushing against dew-wet brambles. One day she will walk these paths alone, her own basket heavy on her hip. But for now, your voice is the steady thread that binds her to the long, quiet lineage of women who catch life and cradle death in their hands. Asterisk, once a year, your village gathers at the edge of the fields for the harvest festival. Picture children with garlands of wildflowers, old men tapping barrels of ale, and the priest murmuring blessings over sheaves of wheat. For you, the festival is more than a celebration. It is a chance to slip charms of good health into the pockets of expectant mothers. A chance to watch the women dance, the glow of firelight on their rounded bellies, a quiet hope for safe deliveries in the months to come. You stand near the bonfire, the warmth on your face, and listen to the hush of prayers and laughter blending with the crackle of flames. For a moment, you allow yourself to believe that your work will be light in the winter ahead. Asterisk, not every birth you attend is in a thatched cottage. Imagine being summoned to a manor house on a crisp winter's night. Heavy doors swing open to thick tapestries, blazing hearths, and a lady of the house laid out on silk sheets, her hair brushed smooth. Servants scurry, and you find yourself whispering instructions to maids who flinch at every cry. Here you must mind your words more than ever, for a noble family's heir is both a blessing and a burden, and blame comes swiftly if anything goes wrong. The lady's hand squeezes yours so tightly you fear the bones will crack. But when the first wail pierces the hush of the manor, you see the relief in her eyes and know your work, for this night at least, is done. Asterisk, sometimes your work lingers long after the birthing bed. Imagine being invited back months later to see a child's first steps on the rough wooden floor of a cottage. The mother beams as the toddler toddles forward, chubby arms outstretched. You bend down, smile, and murmur a blessing under your breath. For a moment, the weight of all the lives you have brought into the world, and those you could not save, lifts. The little one clutches your fingers, their grip surprisingly strong. You feel the pulse of life, fierce and new, and you tuck the memory away for the next cold night, when you must walk alone to a door, pounding with fear. Asterisk, there are moments when your calling brings suspicion instead of gratitude. Imagine a sharp rap at your cottage door. A pair of stern churchmen stand there, robes dusted from the road. They've heard whispers of your herbs, your whispered charms, the words you murmur over mothers and babes that they step inside without. Asking, eyes scanning your bundles of mugwort, your worn pages of herbal notes. You must speak carefully, your voice calm and deferential, explaining that all you do is God's work, that you are no witch, but a woman tending to life as he intended. When they leave, the chill lingers in your bones. You know that your place in the village rests on a knife's edge. Trust and fear forever entwined. Asterisk. Your hands know both the bitter and the sweet. Imagine the dark corner of your cottage where you store carefully tied bundles of dried roots, bark, and blossoms. Some are for easing pain, others for coaxing a stubborn labor forward. A few, if brewed too strong, hold darker powers. By the flicker of a tallow candle, you grind fennel seeds to calm colicky babes, mix honey into a brew to soothe a mother's fever, tuck lavender under pillows to chase away night terrors. Each remedy is a memory, a whispered lesson from an old crone, a secret traded at a market stall. And still, when the door swings open on a stormy night, you wonder, will the right herb save a life this time? Or will it simply ease the passing? Not every life can be saved. Imagine the quiet hush that settles when a babe is lost. The mother weeps into rough linen sheets, her hand gripping yours so tightly your fingers go numb. You whisper blessings, prayers, promises that her body will heal. When the village gathers to lay the tiny bundle into the earth, you stand at the edge of the circle. Faces glance at you, some grateful, some wondering if you could have done more. You feel each gaze, like a stone pressed into your heart. Back at home, you light a beeswax candle and sit with the hush. It is grief, it is memory, and it is the burden you carry for all who must keep walking when another cannot. Asterisk. Sometimes your work follows you into sleep. Imagine curling up on your straw mattress, the faint smell of lavender beneath your cheek. The hush of the village is all around. Owls calling, the distant bark of a dog. Your dreams drift with faces. Mothers whose labor stretched into dawn. Children whose first cries filled dark rooms with hope. You dream of signs. A sudden gust of wind, the hoot of an owl by the window, a vision of a silver fox slipping through the hedgerow. Omens, warnings, reminders that you stand always on the threshold between life and death. When you wake, the embers of your fire glow like tiny eyes. You draw your shawl tighter and murmur a prayer that tomorrow your hands will be enough. Asterisk. In every village, there are secrets that must never pass your lips. Imagine sitting by the hearth with a young girl, belly rounded beneath her apron, eyes wide with fear. She begs you to say nothing, to shield her from gossip, to spare her the scorn of those who will never understand. You keep her secrets wrapped tightly in your heart. You gather what she needs, warm blankets, whispered prayers, bitter herbs, to keep her strong. When the time comes, you help her bear what she must, her tears soaking your sleeve. Long after she's gone back to her daily toil, you carry her story with you, another quiet bond between you and the village you serve. Asterisk. There are paths that twist through the woods behind your cottage, trails known only to those who carry secrets. Imagine stepping barefoot onto mossy ground at dawn, the mist curling low. You hold a small bundle wrapped in linen, roots you'll trade, seeds for the coming season, or maybe something stronger, a bitter powder only shared with those you trust. Birdsong breaks the hush as you pass ancient oaks. You greet an old woman waiting by a fallen log, a healer like you, though her hair is white as milk. You exchange herbs, secrets, and warnings, then vanish back into the fog before the village ever stirs. The woods hold many whispers. You carry them home like stray leaves clinging to your skirts. Asterisk. For all your wisdom, all your years of tending life into the world, your place in the village can be undone with a single accusation. Imagine the hush that falls over the market square when two men approach you, the reeve and the village priest. They speak in low voices of rumor, a child lost too soon, an herbal tonic misunderstood, a superstitious mind convinced you wield unnatural powers. You stand with your shoulders straight, voice calm as you answer their questions. Inside, your heart pounds like a drum. When they leave you standing alone among sacks of grain and baskets of apples, you gather your shawl tighter. You know you will go on, for your hands are needed more than they are feared. But the cost of every life saved is the risk that your own may be undone. Asterisk. Your life is not only hearth and herbs. Sometimes you travel far beyond the edge of the village, carrying your basket over stony paths. Imagine the hush of dawn as you pass farmsteads still dark, your steps steady. A mother-to-be in the next village waits for you. The old path winds through fields of rye, past quiet hedgerows, where rabbits startle at your passing. You pause to sip from a leather flask, to whisper a blessing to the morning sun. When you arrive at the small cottage, the woman's eyes meet yours with relief. You unpack your herbs, your cloths, your gentle words. By the time the sun is high, a new cry will greet the fields, another fragile life, wrapped in your calm, steady care. Asterisk, not every birth you attend ends in sweet cries and relief. Imagine the chill of early spring seeping through rough shutters as you kneel beside a mother whose belly ached too soon. Her eyes search yours, asking questions you cannot answer. You do all you can, warm cloths on her back, calming whispers, the faint scent of lavender in the air. But the child arrives small and silent. You wrap the tiny form in linen, place a sprig of rosemary beside it. You help the mother grieve, though your own chest aches with every heartbeat. Such moments linger in your memory. The world keeps moving, fields must still be plowed, bread still baked, but you carry the memory of that small, fragile life like a hidden knot in your heart. Asterisk, your skills do not rest with the setting sun. Imagine a knock at your door long, after the village sleeps. A hunched figure stands in the moonlight, a father desperate for a cure for his fevered child. You brew your tonics by the light of a single flame. Bitter herbs crushed in a mortar, honey stirred to dull the taste, a whispered charm to calm the frightened man's heart. You press the flask into his hand, give him soft words of hope. Long after he disappears down the dark lane, you sit by the hearth and listen to the wind. Some nights you wonder how many lives depend on your simple hands, how many souls whisper your name in quiet thanks as they drift back to sleep. Asterisk, in your garden, behind the low stone wall, grow plants that hold power far beyond their humble leaves. Imagine the early morning sun glinting off dew-damp nettles, mint, and marjoram. You bend close, shears in hand, muttering the old words your grandmother taught you. Some plants calm fevers, others stir a woman's womb. A few keep death at bay a while longer. You dry them in neat bundles hanging from your rafters, each tied with string, each known by its scent. Even when villagers gossip about witches in the hills, they come to you for these same leaves, trusting you to turn weeds into medicine, fear into healing. The garden is your secret church, its fragrance your prayer. Asterisk, even in your world of worry and whispered prayers, there are moments of lightness. Imagine the whole village gathered in the clearing by the old oak tree, marking the changing season. With songs, cider, and dancing, you stand near the fire, apron dusted with flour from baking sweet loaves. Mothers press babies into your arms so they can spin under garlands of wildflowers. You watch children chase fireflies, young lovers sneak kisses behind hay bales. For a few hours, no one needs your potions or your steady hands. You laugh with the blacksmith's wife, drink a sip of mead from the carpenter's jug. In the glow of the bonfire, you remember that you are not just a keeper of life and death, but also of joy. Asterisk, when the world grows too heavy, you slip away to the edge of the fields at twilight. Imagine lying in tall grass, the hum of crickets blending with the hush of dusk. You watch the clouds drift behind the church spire, your hands folded on your chest. Here, you are not the midwife, not the keeper of secrets, not the guide between birth and death. For this quiet moment, you are simply a woman, held by the same earth you tend. Your breath slows, your mind unwinds. The village will need you tomorrow. The path will call you back at dawn. But tonight, under the endless sky, you belong to no one but yourself, safe, small, and endlessly connected to the simple rhythm of life. Asterisk, sometimes, your small cottage becomes more than a place for herbs and cloths. It becomes a confessional, a place for secrets too heavy to carry alone. Picture a young girl, her fingers worrying the edge of her shawl, eyes red from tears. She speaks of a love that turned cruel, a promise broken under the cloak of night. You listen without judgment, pouring warm broth into a simple wooden bowl. You offer no scorn, only your quiet understanding. When she leaves, you tuck her words deep in the shadows by her hearth. You know how words can wound, but you also know how silence can protect. As the fire burns low, you whisper blessings for her future, hoping that the world might grow kinder with each passing season. Asterisk, your hands do not only cradle the new, they comfort the old. 2. Imagine a small, smoky cottage where an elder lies wrapped in wool blankets, their eyes clouded but kind. You brew a thin soup, feed them by the spoonful, wipe a damp cloth across a fevered brow. Stories drift from their lips, tales of long ago, harvests, wars, and lost loves. You nod, even when words fade into murmurs. You have seen the arc of life, from its first cries to its last sigh. In these tender moments, you understand how each generation rests in the hands of those who remember. When you slip out into the chill night, you breathe gratitude for your own heartbeat, steady and strong. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, not every lesson you share is for men's ears. In the shadow of the woods, you gather with other village women under a canopy of moonlight. Imagine the rustle of skirts, the hush of secrets traded like coins. You speak of herbs for fever, salves for burns, charms for love, and ways to ease a mother's pain when birth turns cruel. Young girls listen wide-eyed, older women nod in agreement. All bound by the rhythm of life, they tend together when dawn threatens to break the spell. You slip home with baskets of herbs and a quiet strength. In these small circles, your craft survives, passed hand to hand like a candle flame that never dies. Asterisk, one crisp dawn, a stranger appears, a traveler from a far-off village, clothes thick with dust and worry. He carries a letter, sealed in wax you don't recognize. It is a summons for you to aid a woman in labor, miles from the safety of your hearth. You pack your basket, linen cloths, iron scissors, a pouch of dried lavender. You step out into the early mist, feet crunching frost-tipped grass. With each mile you walk, you carry not only your tools, but your faith that life will come safely into the world. Some roads are longer than others, but your calling has no borders. Your path stretches as far as your courage does. Asterisk, as your story closes, imagine yourself once more by the hearth. A single lantern flickers beside your chair, its flame small but steady. You have brought dozens, hundreds of souls into this world, each one a new spark to chase away the darkness. Some remember you with gratitude, others have long forgotten your name. But in the hush of night, you know that your life has been more than the struggle, more than the fear. It has been a lantern carried through storm and sorrow, lighting the way for those yet to come. And now, as the fire dwindles to embers, breathe slow and deep. May your dreams be gentle, and may you wake tomorrow knowing you've lived each day with purpose, just as you always have. Asterisk, the tithe barn stands at the edge of the village, its massive oak beams creaking under the weight of thatched roof and time. Here, the villagers gather once every few weeks to bring their dues. Sacks of grain, baskets of turnips, a chicken tucked under someone's arm. But tonight, You find yourself lingering after dusk, alongside the midwife. She speaks in low tones. To a worried young couple in the farthest shadowy corner, her words careful and soft, hands folded over her apron. The smell of straw and old hay mixes with the sweetness of dry grain. Mice rustle in the eaves, unseen. This place is more than storage. It's a refuge, a secret confessional. You lean against a rough-hewn pillar and listen as she gives hushed counsel about a child born too soon, the herbs that might help next time, the gossip that must be silenced before it becomes ruin. Here in the tithe barn, the village's hidden pains and petty scandals hang in the air like dust motes. The midwife's role is more than birth and death. She is keeper of fragile secrets, a weaver of small mercies. You feel the rough splinters against your palms, the heavy hush of truth traded in shadows. It's near dawn when you follow the midwife through the misty lanes to the parish cross, where the village gathers for blessings, announcements, and sometimes farewells. The stone cross stands weathered and moss-covered, its carving softened by centuries of wind and rain. But this morning, it's the whispers you notice, murmured prayers, faint confessions, questions that hover like ghosts in the chill air. Mother kneels, shawl drawn tight around her shoulders, hoping the midwife will say her lost child is at peace. She rubs her swollen belly for the one yet to come. The midwife places a palm on the woman's back, half priest, half sister, her, breath clouding in the dawn light. Here, her work is part ritual, part comfort, threading the living to the dead with words that bind wounds invisible to the eye. You stand a respectful distance away, feet damp from the dewy grass, listening as the villagers bring their fears. A stillborn baby, a ghost seen by the hedge, a sense that sin must be cleansed before it festers. At the parish cross, the midwife becomes a bridge between life's fragile beginnings and the dark hush of the grave. Not every cure the midwife offers is found in the apothecary's book. Some wisdom grows wild in the tangled hedgerows at the village's edge, foxglove and feverfew, mugwort and mistletoe, secrets carried on the wind since the time of grandmothers' grandmothers. Tonight, the midwife brings you along, lantern, swinging low as she searches the hedge for a sprig of tansy to ease a woman's cramping womb. She shows you how to crush the leaves between your fingers, how to dry roots above the hearth, how to murmur a charm under your breath if the neighbors watch too closely to the bishop's clerk. She is a simple healer, but to the fearful and the desperate, she is the hedge witch. A woman both revered and distrusted, one foot in the world of the saints and the other in the shadowed places where the wild herbs grow. You taste the bitter tongue of dock leaf on your tongue and wonder, if the plague comes, if famine returns, would these humble hedgerow secrets be enough to keep a whole village alive? Beneath the cobblestones of the village green lies the old well, a place whispered about by women who draw its cold water before dawn. The midwife knows its secret better than most. This well holds not just water, but gossip, prayers, and the echoes of things lost. When a birth goes wrong, when a baby comes too early or too late, the midwife might slip here before sunrise, lowering a small bundle of herbs wrapped in cloth, murmuring a plea for safe passage. Some call it superstition, others a last hope when all else fails. You stand beside her now, listening to the creak of the rope, the gentle splash far below. The damp stones are cool against your palm. Around you, the village sleeps on, unaware of these quiet rituals that bind life and death together in ways no priest would ever write down. You wonder, as the bucket rises again, if the well keeps its secrets, or if the stones remember every word spoken to the depths. There are places the midwife must visit that no one speaks of openly, a patch of earth beyond the church wall, where tiny graves sit unmarked under the shadow of yew trees. When an infant does not survive its first night, when a mother's tears fall on cold cheeks, and will never grow warm again. It is often the midwife who carries the burden of what comes next. Some priests refuse to bury a child unbaptized, so the midwife slips through the graveyard gate at dusk or dawn, a tiny shroud hidden under her cloak. She hums a lullaby no one else hears, her footsteps soft on the dewy grass, a final act of care for the soul that might never be named in any book. You stand beside her now, feeling the hush of the churchyard settle over you like a blanket. The branches creak overhead. A carved angel watches in silence. The midwife smooths the earth, murmuring a prayer older than any sermon, binding grief to memory and memory to rest. Imagine her boots crunching softly on the village path as dawn breaks. The midwife's shift is never truly over. She moves, from birthbed to graveyard to family hearth, carrying stories in her bones that no one else can hold. Her basket is empty now, but her mind is full. Which mother will need her next? Which herbs must be foraged? Which hush money must be paid to silence gossip about a child born at the wrong time? You see the frost catching on the thatch roofs. Smell the distant town of chimney smoke. Dogs bark once, then fall silent. She nods at the baker's boy who stirs his coals, at the miller's daughter peering through her shutters. In the hush of dawn, her steps echo the rhythm of her life. Always moving, always watching, always returning before she is missed. In this hour, the midwife belongs to no one, and yet to everyone. She is the keeper of secrets, the bearer of sorrow, the guardian of beginnings that don't always lead to happy endings. Picture the hush of a stone chapel at dawn. You stand beside the midwife as she waits near the back, hands folded, eyes lowered. The mother she delivered only weeks before kneels at the altar rail, her hair neatly pinned, a candle flickering in her pale fingers. She has come for the churching, the ritual cleansing after childbirth, meant to purify her body and spirit, so she may rejoin her neighbors in the eyes of God. The priest's voice echoes off the damp stones, Latin words murmured over the faint coughs of onlookers. For the midwife, this is a moment of watchfulness. She sees the faint tremor in the mother's shoulders, the way her husband's boots tap the flagstones in impatience. She has heard all the whispers. Was the birth truly legitimate? Is the child well? Will there be more? When the prayers end, the woman rises, stepping carefully across the chill floor. The midwife slips outside first, gathering her cloak tight. She knows this ritual binds the mother to her role once more, a vessel, to be filled, cleansed, and filled again. And the midwife will be there, every time, to catch what the world demands. Now, the hush of the chapel gives way to the warm hum of a Lord's solar. You stand at the edge of a polished floor strewn with rushes, a small cradle rocking gently by the hearth. The midwife sits close, not at the center of this noble family's circle, but always near enough to see and to be seen. A wet nurse hums a quiet tune as the newborn feeds at her breast, her eyes flicking now and then toward the midwife. This is a job bound by strict rules and keen watchfulness. The midwife knows the wet nurse's diet must be hearty, her health spotless. She inspects her for signs of illness, advises the lady of the house on how best to keep her milk mother strong. But beneath it all lies an unspoken fear that the wet nurse might favor her own babe or the Lord's child, or worse, pass along a sickness of which she herself is unaware. In these days, suspicion clings to the warm cradle like a winter draft. The midwife's eyes never leave the infant, even as the fire crackles and the lady's jewels glitter in the shadows. Hush of the Lord's solar fades into a darker memory, the midwife's steps echoing along a narrow village, lane heavy with dread. The year is 1348, and the air hums with whispered prayers and the faint tolling of church bells. A child cries behind a shuttered window. You, the midwife, Press a linen cloth soaked in vinegar against your nose. It does little to mask the stench of sickness. Mothers still labor, even as death creeps door to door. The parish priest may fear to enter, but the midwife cannot. Earth, like death, does not wait. In a cottage dim with candle smoke, you kneel beside a young woman gripped by fever. You wash your hands with rose water, though deep down you know it will not stop what comes. Outside, a cart creaks by, the driver calling for the dead. You check the babe's position, the mother's pulse fluttering like a trapped bird beneath your fingertips. You are no plague doctor, but you stand between life and the pit. When the new life comes, if it comes, you will wash it with herbs. Bind the mother's belly and step out into a street where the rats scurry and the churchyard grows crowded. Still, the midwife stays, for who else will stand guard between the cradle and the grave? Let the hush of the plague years drift behind you now. Imagine the midwife's life when the threat is not sickness, but scandal. In every cramped timber cottage and manor chamber alike, secrets cling to the rafters. The midwife is the keeper of them all. You stand before a wide hearth, warming your hands, the low murmur of women's gossip curling around you like smoke. Perhaps you are asked to look the other way when a wealthy merchant's daughter seeks help to hide a shameful birth. Perhaps a lady of the manor whispers of a child fathered by someone not her lord. The midwife is trusted, but she is watched too. Every whispered confession balanced on the edge of her reputation. To be a midwife is to weigh loyalty and survival daily. Speak too freely, and you risk banishment, or worse, the stocks. Keep too many secrets, and you risk being called a witch or accused when things go wrong. Your skill with herbs and charms makes you respected and feared, yet you remain there, night after night, in the hush of birthing rooms and confessional corners. With every new life drawn into the world, you hold your tongue. So shut the secrets and hope they do not unravel in the candlelight. Drift deeper now into another test, the medieval midwives. Delicate balance, walking the narrow line between the church's teachings and ancient folk traditions. Picture yourself treading a rutted path to a tiny stone chapel, a basket of herbs at your side, angelica root, mugwort, maybe a small vial of holy water blessed by the local priest. In many villages, childbirth is both sacred and suspicious. The church fears old pagan charms, but needs the midwife's skill to preserve lives. So you whisper prayers over the basin of water to wash the newborn, but slip a protective charm of knotted red thread into the mother's hand when the priest's back is turned. You stand at the crossroads of belief. If the mother or baby dies, as they often do, a priest may ask, was it God's will, or did your forbidden charms draw the devil near? And yet, if your secret folk cures succeed where prayers fail, tongues wag that you hold unnatural powers. Through storms of superstition, you keep your calm. You learn to speak carefully to the pious and the desperate alike, your pockets full of rosemary and small blessings. Each cry of a newborn reminds you, your place is as much in the world of the unseen as the seen. Rest deeper now into the darker edge of a medieval midwife's life, the fear that every birth gone wrong might turn neighbor against neighbor. Imagine the candlelit hush of a cottage where a stillborn child lies wrapped in linen, the mother weak and pale. In the dim corner, a husband stands rigid, eyes full of suspicion. A grieving grandmother mutters about curses, ill omens, and the midwife's whispered charms. Sometimes, these whispers swell into accusations. A mother dies of fever days later. A tragedy in an age without antiseptics, but a convenient excuse to blame the one who guided the birth. You, the midwife, could find yourself hauled before the local magistrate or church court, forced to defend your life's work against charges of negligence, or witchcraft. Imagine the dread that seeps into your bones each time You step into another birthing chamber. You work in shadows and risk, where your only tools are your herbs, your hands, and your reputation. You pray that your record remains untarnished, that you never draw the wrong eye. Because in this fragile village web, it takes only a single misfortune to spin your name into the mouth of the devil. Asterisk, let your mind drift to dawn's hush, the hour when a village midwife slips out, apron tied, basket swinging at her hip. In a world without pharmacies, you are your own healer, your own apothecary. Imagine yourself bending over dewy meadows, fingers brushing through wild yarrow, mugwort, and chamomile. Each leaf and stem carries a secret that's been passed from hand to hand, woman to woman, never written down for fear that learned men might accuse you of heresy or witchcraft. Sometimes you trade gossip for knowledge. The shepherd's wife says she knows where pennyroyal grows thickest, tucked beside the old monastery walls. An herbalist from the next village will teach you a new salve if you promise to guard her recipe. You weigh every root and blossom, hoping they'll ease labor pains, staunch bleeding, or calm a new mother's fevers. Picture your humble hut, its rafters hung with drying bunches, a living library of cures and caution. In your mortar and pestle, you grind petals and bark, whispering a blessing as you work, hoping that the next birth will be safer than the last. You know these secrets can save lives, but they can also draw suspicion. So you rise before the sun and gather what you need while the world still sleeps. Asterisk, as the sun climbs higher. Imagine you stepping softly into a cottage's small, dark chamber, the lying-in room, shuttered tight to keep out the chill and wandering spirits. The mother, pale and tense, lies swaddled in blankets, her breath shallow but steady. It is here that you, the village midwife, become more than a healer. You are a guard at the threshold of life and death. Feel the hush of the room, the scent of beeswax candles mingling with lavender and rosemary. You've tucked into the rushes to mask the harshness of birth. The air is heavy with whispers, a mother's moans, her sister's murmured prayers, your calm instructions to boil water, to fetch more cloths. You know which words soothe and which ones spur a woman to push when she believes she can't. There are no surgeons standing by, only you, your calloused hands, and a lifetime of experience passed down in hushed conversations by firelight. This is a woman's realm, a hidden world beyond the eyes of men, yet it hums with its own fierce power. A healthy birth is a triumph. A stillborn child, a torn womb, an infection, these shadows you carry home with you, stitched into the hem of your apron with every family you've helped grow or grieved to lose. Imagine now the mother's sigh of relief when her baby's first cry pierces the dim chamber. You swaddle the child in soft linen, press her to her mother's breast, and know that for tonight, at least, you have kept the spirits at bay. Now, settle into the stillness of another chamber. This time, you stand over a heavy wooden birthing stool. Picture its sturdy legs, polished by countless hands that have steadied mothers on the brink of life's greatest trial. No padded hospital beds, no sterile steel. Just a stool, open beneath, that allows gravity and your guiding touch to do the work. Feel the tension in the young woman's hands as she grips the stool's sides, her knuckles white, sweat beading at her brow. You murmur steady words in her ear, half prayer, half instruction. A cloth soaks the trickle of blood. The scent of crushed herbs mingles with the sharp tang of fear. You know the secrets of the birthing stool, how to adjust the mother's position so the baby's passage is smoothest, how to slide your hands beneath to feel for a footling breech or a stuck shoulder. You know when to press, when to pull, and when to trust that time and strength will finish what your skill has begun. Yet each birth is a gamble. One slip of the knife you use to cut a stubborn cord, one tear that goes too deep, You bear the responsibility for these moments long after the mother is safely tucked away, her babe at her breast. Now, hear the low cry of the child. Feel the tremor of relief as the mother collapses back into your arms. Another life enters the world on this old stool, witness to generations of women who have screamed, prayed, and gasped here before. Asterisk. Now imagine yourself not just in the hush of a village cottage, but under the vigilant gaze of the local priest or parish clerk. In the medieval world, childbirth is not merely a private affair. It is deeply entwined with the Church's guardianship of souls. And you, as the midwife, walk a fine line between healing and heresy. Picture the flickering candlelight in your small chamber as you whisper prayers over the laboring mother. You know the right psalms, the Latin phrases, sometimes half-learned, sometimes improvised, that reassure the family you are no witch. The priest may demand to see the newborn at once, to perform an emergency baptism should its first cries falter. A baby lost before baptism means a soul cast into limbo, a fate you will do anything to prevent. And yet, you must do what you must. If the child emerges weak and breathless, you keep your vial of warm salt water near, ready to dribble it across the infant's brow, murmuring a hurried benediction before its final breath, all while praying that no one accuses you of sorcery from muttering blessings without the priest's sanction. This is your tightrope. You are a woman of knowledge, but that knowledge is suspect. You deliver new life, but could be denounced for using the very herbs and chants that make birth safer. One rumor, one bitter word from a rival, and you might find yourself kneeling in penance, or worse, before the bishop's court dot, so you keep your head bowed, your words careful, your secrets close. You are not just a midwife. You are a keeper of fragile souls in a world that fears what it cannot see. Asterisk. Take another slow breath and settle back into the shadows of your little workroom, the space where you keep your potions, your dried herbs, your battered wooden chest of tools. Here, behind the cottage door, you are both healer and suspect. To be a medieval midwife means you carry a heavy burden, the ancient belief that women with knowledge of birth, fertility, and herbs might be trafficking with dark forces. It is an accusation that could hang over your head for years, ready to ignite if gossip or envy finds a spark. You measure out fennel seeds and mugwort, whispering prayers that your concoctions will soothe the mother's pain. Yet you know, in your bones, that if she dies, the blame may fall on you. Did she curse the womb? They might wonder. Did she call upon spirits to claim the baby? And if too many children fail to survive the harsh winters, or if a baby is born marked or deformed, the villagers may whisper your name alongside the word witch. You hear the murmurs through the market stalls when you walk by. Old men crossing themselves, young girls glancing away. You live by their trust, but that trust can curdle overnight. Even your own family must tread lightly. Husbands and sons know that your craft sustains them, yet fear it all the same. And so, you perform your rites with care. You keep your healing herbs hidden in simple linen pouches, never boasting of secret cures. You nod gravely when the priest reminds you to rely on holy water and the saints, though you know the saints alone cannot ease a breech birth or turn away the fever that sometimes claims mother and child alike. Imagine the tension you feel, the constant tightrope of hope and fear. Every birth is a miracle you coax into the world, but every birth is also a reminder. If you fail too often, you may be called not midwife, but witch. Asterisk. Lean closer to the hearth's flicker. Tonight, you have been summoned through muddy lanes, the wind at your back, the distant howl of a wolf echoing like a warning. Another child is coming, but this time it is not a farmer's wife or a peasant girl. It is the young bride of the reeve, the local official who holds power over land and law. You step inside the largest house in the village. ducking under a timber lintel. Your eyes adjust to the candlelit chamber. Tapestries flutter, the fire crackles, and the girl lies pale on a straw-stuffed bed. Her mother grips her hand, praying under her breath, but her eyes keep darting to you, the midwife, the one who must know what to do. For hours you work in silence. You massage the mother's belly with warm oil. You check the baby's position. You breathe ancient chants passed down from the women before you. The child is slow to come. The air grows tense, and you hear the reeve pacing outside the room, boots creaking on the rush-strewn floor. Finally, a tiny cry cuts through the darkness. You cradle the newborn, wrap it in rough linen, whisper a blessing for strong lungs and stout bones. The mother gasps with relief, yet you see her lips tremble, so young, so fragile. She has stepped through death's door and returned not, but now the gossip will swirl like a cold wind. Some will say the birth was too long, that your methods were strange. Others will claim you murmured charms not found in any holy book. You thank the reeve stiffly when he presses a silver penny into your palm, but you feel the weight of your next days settle like a heavy shawl across your shoulders. A birth like this can lift your standing, or it can ruin you. You walk back through the village streets before dawn, the chill biting your fingers. The baby's cry echoes behind you, a promise of life renewed, and the unspoken threat that every life you deliver could just as easily lead you to the stake. If fate turns against you, in the hush of a moonless night, you find yourself kneeling on the packed earth floor of a hovel at the very edge of the village. This is no birth of celebration. It is a birth veiled in shame and secrecy. The girl is barely more than a child herself, her eyes wide with fear and her hair tangled with sweat. No family stands by her side. Only you and the shadows. Her belly tightens under your careful hands. You work quickly, your touch gentle yet firm. There are no candles here, just the embers in the hearth flickering low. She bites her knuckles to keep from crying out. The child slips into your hands like a secret, slippery and small. But the silence that follows is deafening. No. First gasp, no cry to split the darkness. You rub the tiny chest, blow warmth over its face, willing it to breathe. But the truth settles around you like cold mist. It is stillborn. The girl turns her face away, salt tears mingling with the straw. She is terrified. Terrified of what? The priest will say, what her father will do, how the neighbors will talk. In these parts, a birth outside of wedlock is scandal enough. A dead babe? Whispers of witchcraft stir like dry leaves in the wind. You wrap the tiny body in linen, a shroud no bigger than a bundle of cloth. You murmur a quiet prayer, not for salvation, but for protection, for silence. Tomorrow, the villagers will wonder. They will glance at you when you pass. Did you take the life to spare the mother shame? Did your herbs fail? Did your charms anger the saints? Your feet are heavy as you walk back through the village lanes. Each shuttered window hides a tongue ready to wag. One false accusation, one rumor too many, and you, the midwife who brings life, could be branded a taker of life instead. This is the line you walk, between birth and death, hope and fear, a healer and a heretic, forever at the mercy of the stories they choose to tell. In the hush of the manor's solar, you kneel on polished floorboards instead of packed earth. A tapestry flutters slightly in the draft, depicting saints who watch you with unblinking eyes. Before you sits the lady of the house, pale, trembling, wrapped in a fine linen shift. Her husband, the Lord, is nowhere to be seen. But you know who sent for you. This child, barely showing in her belly, is not her husband's. You knew from the moment the steward slipped a coin into your palm and led you up the back stairs. A hush payment and a command without words. Fix this. But the lady's eyes plead for another way. She wants this child. A risk for her, and for you, you need your hands in your apron. You could brew the herbs, the bitter tea that makes thee wound spasm like a trapped bird. You could do it, and the Lord's secret would never come to term. Or you could keep your own counsel, pretend you tried, but the brew failed. You would be paid either way. And you know the Lord will not forgive a living reminder of his shame. The lady clutches your wrist, her fingers cold as river stones. Please, she whispers, not yet. You see the fear, not of the birth, but of the gossip that could ruin her, of the husband's fury when he returns, of the child's life if it ever draws breath. You weigh the pouch of silver at your hip as you slip out into the moonlight. Your path is never simple. You are a guardian of secrets, a keeper of bloodlines, a shield between women and the hungry. Eyes of men who believe they own every cradle. One wrong brew, one rumor that reaches the priest's ears, and your own neck could bend to the rope dot in the darkness. You murmur a prayer for the lady, for her child, and for yourself, ever treading the tightrope between service and survival. As our long wander through the hidden life of a medieval midwife draws to its quiet end, let your mind settle gently like the hush that follows a midnight birth. You have drifted through dark timber-bird cottages, candlelit chambers, drafty abbeys, and the secret corners of bustling manors, each a small window into the hard, quiet, and vital labor of women whose names have slipped like water through the pages of official history. You've imagined the weary hands stirring warming herbs. Over coals, the whispered prayers before cutting the cord, the coins hidden in a linen pouch as payment for secrets kept. You've witnessed the thin line between service and suspicion, how a midwife's knowledge, so vital to life, was often feared, misunderstood, and quietly persecuted. Let this journey remind you that history's true weight so often rests on the shoulders of the ordinary, the ones who rose in the dark, washed in cold basins, and carried the burdens of others with few thanks, but a loaf of bread or a candle's flame for their trouble. May you drift into sleep feeling the hush of that distant world, the sound of muffled footsteps on packed earth floors, the sigh of a mother's relief, the creak of a cottage door closing against the night. And in that hush, perhaps you'll sense a small gratitude that your own life is, warmed by modern comforts those who came before you could scarcely imagine. Rest now, dreamer of the past. Let the stories fade softly like dawn's first pale light over an ancient thatched roof. Tomorrow's world awaits, but for now, sleep deeply in the knowledge that you have traced the forgotten paths of a life once lived, and in doing so, honored it. Good night, and thank you for listening to Boring History for Sleep.